everyone. Meet Buddy. This is my dog Buddy, one of our 3 dogs. That's our Golden. Hi everyone. Well, I hope you are doing really well. Welcome to week 2, the week of March 30th. And this week we're really talking about data analysis. So by Friday of last week, all of you have already uploaded your transcripts, your initial draft of your transcripts. For this week, you are going to be working for class activity number 8. You are going to be working on cleaning up your transcripts. And what I mean by that is that the group of you who have all transcribed, let's just say for example, interview number 2. Everybody who transcribed interview number 2 should touch base with each other and discuss your different transcripts. Now, hopefully, they are all very, very similar, but you might have some discrepancies. Somebody might have heard a word that other people didn't hear, or some of you might have added things in that other people didn't hear. So what I'm asking all of you to do is to go through and make sure that you have one transcript for, say for example, interview 2, that all of you agree that's the transcript we want to do, and then you upload that onto Blackboard. What I don't want for you to do is you to say, oh, Janie, let's just take Janie's and roll with it. Please don't do that. Please look at each other's transcripts of that same interview, that same focus group interview, and decide, all right, these are the pieces of each one we want to make sure we integrate, because that's the truest to capturing what happened in that focus group interview. All right, so that's what you're doing for class activity number 8. Once you all upload those, we should have interviews 1 through 14 on the Blackboard site on class activity number 8, and that's going to be our data. Now the fun starts. If you can hear a couple of noises in the background, you might hear Buddy chomping on a toy. That's okay, we'll try to play with that. But for this week, we're focusing on our data analysis. And kind of look here, and kind of sticking with the dog theme. We have a lot of pictures of dogs. There are a lot of different types of dogs. Did you know that? Now, I tell you what, if I were one of my 4-H'ers, I would be able to tell you exactly how many types of dogs we have. But one thing I do know is that there are 7 groups of dogs. So we could categorize these by groups of dogs. For example, it's a cute picture of Buddy. It's not Buddy, but it's a Golden. And if we wanted to look at him, he is a member of the sporting group. And if I wanted to find another dog that's a member of the sporting group, I'd find a Labrador Retriever. But that's not the only type of group of dogs there are. There are a lot of different types of dogs. For example, we've got the Pomeranian, and the Pomeranian is in the toy group. And then we also have the Chihuahua. The Chihuahua is in the toy group. So if we look at these cards right here, we might think, whoa, this is obvious. So here we have 2 examples of a toy, and here we have 2 examples of sporting. But you know what's interesting? If we look at all 4 of them, if we were going to categorize dogs by type of dog, we could easily say, look, they're all blonde. They're all some shade of blonde. And so if we were going according to color of dogs, all 4 of these dogs would be in the same category. So as we're thinking about our data, as I talk, and you need to go to the PowerPoint slides and look at them in detail, because the examples or the instructions I've given are a lot more detailed there. But what you're going to do is you're going to start out by just really trying to get a really deep understanding of your data. So with the dogs, people who know a lot about dogs understood what these different categories were. Not the categories, but they understood what the different species of dogs were, and looking at the different types of dogs, and they're like, how can we group them together? And after really being familiar with them, they thought, well, what are the attributes that we want to really identify? And as you'll note, like with the sporting and with the toy, it's either on size or function or whatever, that these are only animals that are kind of similar. They have different attributes that resemble each other. So as you go through your transcripts and you're getting your thick understanding of your transcripts, once we get class activity 8 accomplished, and we have the interview, all of the focus group interviews captured with our final transcripts for each one of those interviews, I'd like you to go through and read them each at least 3 times. You might be thinking, oh my gosh, Dr. Beck, that's a lot to do. Well, that's true. But you know what? That's going to take you a lot less time than if we listened to each of those focus group interviews 3 times. By going through the process of transcribing them, we have already reduced our data. We have reduced it to a manageable size and function. If we had done 40 focus groups, we might elect to reduce our data even more by saying, oh, well, we're going to take a sample of these transcripts, but because we've only done 15, we're going to go ahead and use all of those as part of our data. Okay, so let's play with this a little more. So we've decided we're going to look through all of our types, and we just played a little bit with the types of dogs. Let me give you another example. If we had been able to be in face-to-face, I would have brought to class a bunch of bags of candy. You're like, Dr. Beck, I want to be in class. Believe me, I do too. But given that we're not in class, I just brought these out as an example of different kind of candy we've got left over. It's kind of nasty. I think some of them are from Halloween. Shh, don't tell anybody. They possibly won't ever get eaten. But if I were going to sort these, how would I do it? Well, it would really kind of depend on my research questions, like what it is that I want to know. But let's say, for example, if I wanted to understand them based on taste, right? If my research question about what the taste of candy, I would divide them up and I say, well, look, we've got chocolate here, and here's another piece of chocolate and chocolate. You can tell I really like chocolate in our family. I think that's a Snickers. Yep, that's chocolate. These are kind of a fruity taste with the little Sour Patch ones and the Skittles. Spearmint gum, I guess we kind of put that as fruity. And these, to be honest with you, I think these taste like chalk, so I'm going to go with the chalk taste. And these are kind of fruity, so I'll go there. So that's taste. But you know what? If I were thinking about how else I want to organize them, like in terms of how they look, right? I might go with multi-packs versus single serving. I could go with round. That's not really round. That's not really either. So round versus other versus rectangle. I'd have a rectangle category, right? What is that, square? Possibly square, right? And then this is our famous triangle one, chocolate chips. Yes, okay? So as I'm going through my data, I would try to organize them according to how things fit together. But before I get there, I'd have to have had a basic understanding of what this is. So I know that this is a chocolate crunch bar because I've had chocolate crunch bars before, and without even opening this wrapper, I can tell you that it's chocolate with something crunchy in it, and it's really yummy, and I might have it after I finish my lecture. But I know what that is. That's why you need to go through your data. That's why you need to read those transcripts over, and then over, and then over, so you know what's in them. And you might find stories, you might find jokes, you might find just statement responses. In your data, you might have the data about the pop culture, the data about school programs, and the data about family and friends, because those are the questions we ask. As a group, you all need to think about how it is that you have your research questions, and what are the types of things that are coming together for you as a group with this, right? And so as you're going through, you will have coded them, you will have known what is in there. You'll be able to say, okay, this is an instance of this and this is an instance of that. But then you say, how can we put this together? And that's where you start to come up with your categories. Okay, you're able to group. Now I give you an example in the PowerPoint slides about my Celebrity Health Narrative Project. For example, I have individuals who started a foundation. I have individuals who gave public statements. But as I was thinking about, and I coded them as such in my data, but as I was thinking about how do these things all fit together, I thought these things fit together as an instance of activism. Right? They're all kind of examples and fit together as activism. Much like if we look at the toy category of dogs, those all have in common the fact that they're small, right? Even though if we wanted to come up with a yappy dog category, we could look back and that we might have a completely different representation about who would be in that yappy dog category, right? So we take those and then we're trying to answer our research questions. The last thing I ask you to do in terms of this process, this initial process, is going through all of those transcripts once again after you've got some categories, and you try to think, what are examples or what are pieces of this data that fit with these key categories that we're talking about, and that's what you're going to be doing. So today I gave you a couple of examples. I gave you examples of the dogs, and I gave you examples of the candy. I'm going to give you one last example, and I tell you what, have any of y'all ever played Mr. Potato Head? I love Mr. Potato Head. When at one point in time at Disney, they had this Mr. Potato Head store, and I love the Mr. Potato Head store. These are all things from the Mr. Potato Head store. I'm dumping them out. Okay, so just to dump some of these things out, I've got a hat, I've got eyeballs, I've got accessories, the Mickey, whoops, sorry, the eyeballs got popped there. The Mickey accessory, I've got the popcorn, I've got an ear, I've got more eyeballs. And I'm not gonna go through the process of categorizing these things, but I tell you what, I could not just categorize these without taking some time to think about it any more than you can come up with the categories in your transcripts without spending some time with them. On first glance, you might be thinking, wow, how would you even go about coding this? And I said, okay, here's a hat, it's an accessory, and I could say the hat is an instance of an accessory, but how do other things fit together, right? I have seen this before, you haven't, but with the transcripts, you need to spend some time with those. And after you read them for the first and the second and the third time, what you need to code will become evident, what you need, and how those things start to become categories, and then how you come up with themes in response to your research questions. And that's where we're going to go as we start ebbing into next week. But for this week, for class activity number 7, I'm asking you to do an activity kind of like this that's in your house. I'm asking you to go in your pantry, or wherever you keep your food, or your pantry and your refrigerator, and I'm asking you to come up with categories of food. And look at it and think, okay, well, how do I do it? Maybe you'll think, okay, I want to do like boxed versus frozen. I want to, but the boxed and frozen aren't going to capture all of your food, right? I think what I want you to do is try to come up with a way of understanding what food you have. And I'd like you to write about that in class activity number 7. How do you categorize the food that's in your house, following the instructions that I give you on your PowerPoint, and with the understanding that I just presented with this lecture? And I'd like you to post about it on class activity number 7. As with last week, the very first person who responds doesn't have to comment on anybody else's. The second person only has to comment on the first person's. And the third person only has to comment on the first 2. Everyone else, you need to at least provide some sort of response to at least 3 other people who are peers in the class, saying, oh, that's interesting, or I've never thought of that before, or something like that, so that we can start a little bit of a dialogue, okay? That's what you'll do for class activity 7. Both class activity 7 and class activity 8 are due by no later than midnight Eastern Standard Time, Friday on April the 3rd. So that's this week's class. Once we get to next week's class, we'll start looking at how we can go back to our transcripts and start meeting with our groups and start really getting into that data and seeing how these concepts can become relevant to the data that we have collected for our project. Well, until next week, I wish you all the best. I hope that you're staying well and healthy. If you have any questions about anything, please just email me. I'm checking email Monday through Friday. So with that, I hope you have a great rest of the week. If you have any questions, just email. Thanks.